Good afternoon, class. My name is Colby Deneen, and I will be presenting to you Apple as a corporation with my partner, Brendan Bascow. Before we get into it, I'd like to give you a brief history of Apple. Apple was founded on April 1st, 1976. It was founded by three men by the name of Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. Apple remains a multinational technology company, specializes in handheld electronic devices, software, and online services. Apple started out as solely a personal computer company. Apple became a player in the computer industry when they developed the innovative graphical user interface, or GUI, in their personal computers. They gained a large following from the original Macintosh in 1984, and the company is estimated to be worth about $2.8 trillion today. Here are a few technology changes within Apple. Apple started as a personal computer company in 1976. A major advance in the technology in the late 70s and early 80s was the integration of graphical user interface, or GUI, as I mentioned before. Something a lot of people don't know is Microsoft Office was actually started on the original Macintosh. The Macintosh 128 kilobyte of RAM, developed in 1984, was considered ahead of its time because of its processing power. The first personal computer to use a mouse and a 3.5-inch floppy drive as well. The PowerBook, developed in 1991, was the first look at the modern-day laptop. The PowerBook weighed about 5 pounds, which is unheard of in 1991 for a computer. Apple then went on to develop many staple household items such as the iPod, iTunes, iPhones, iPads, Apple Watches, and personal and home computers. Here are a few structural changes within Apple. Before Steve Jobs was ousted from the company, he would oversee every and all projects and bounce around between different departments. The failure of the computer, the Apple III, and the outrageously high prices of the Macintosh made John Sculley decide that it was time to move on from Steve Jobs, who formerly hired him as a CEO from Pepsi. John Sculley then gave Apple conventional structure. He divided up the company into business units and with their own profit loss statements. This is typical of a decentralized organization. After a few years and a few failed products, Steve Jobs was brought back onto the team of Apple. Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1996. When he returned, he laid off all the general managers of the business units. This all happened in one day. Apple was then structured to be a hierarchical organizational structure under Steve Jobs. This involves a company to be based on product-based grouping and functionality. Apple still maintains this same functional organization structure today with Tim Cook as CEO. Here are some strategy changes within Apple. Apple started as a personal computer company, selling their hardware and software in an emerging market. It was not until the 1990s, early 2000s, that Apple had seen strategy change to develop a market in personal electronic devices. The emergence of the iPod and iTunes changed the game for Apple forever. The iPod was considered a more personalized, higher quality MP3 player or Sony Walkman. iTunes struck a deal with the 5 largest record labels in the world to safely distribute music to users for paying 99 cents for each song they wanted to download without the risk of piracy. The software was also compatible with about 90% of PCs at the time, which was unheard of. iPods kept seeing upgrades every year up until the iPod Touch. The iPod Touch was a touchscreen device that closely resembles iPhones most of us own today. It wasn't until 2007 Apple developed and marketed their new iPhone. They would bring the same personalization factor to their cellular phones just as they did the personal computers and iPods before this venture. Little did they know that they would change the game for cell phones and personal electronic devices forever, giving this base iPhone an upgrade each and every year. And here are a few pictures of the devices I've mentioned. To the left, we have the Macintosh from 1984 with the 125 kilobyte RAM. And then we have the PowerBook right in the middle to the right of the Macintosh. PowerBook was the first modern day laptop that we all use today, and that was in 1991. All the way to the right is the original iPod that was meant to separate itself from MP3 players and Walkman that society has seen before the iPod. And then we have the original iPhone, which almost all of us own and use one of these today, and it's just crazy to see how far they've actually come from the original. And that will wrap up my section of the presentation. Thank you.
All right, I hope you guys are all doing well. I'm going to be doing the change of people and the resistance to change. So obviously there's many people who have been in the Apple Corporation since they've been around since 1976, but Apple has been around for many years, so it's had its fair share of CEOs. It was created by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and there's actually a third founder, which I did not know. I thought it was just Jobs and Wozniak. His name was Ronald Wayne. He had 10% of the company, but he sold it back to Jobs and Wozniak just 12 days later. Mike Markula, he was an investor. He was the first investor, I guess you could say, technically, of Apple. He invested $250,000 in Apple for the Apple II. $250,000 is considered $1 million today. Markula stayed on after his investment to be on the board of directors for Apple in 1977. And also in 1977, they hired an input director, Jerry Manock, who helped design a compact form of the Apple II. And the Apple II helped create demand for the home computer, as, we've seen that computers were kind of like big and bulky and there's kind of no room for them in the house. And then Michael Scott was hired to be their first president. Mark Markula introduced Michael Scott to Jobs and Wozniak, and they believed that he was a good first president. So he was important because he guided them in a time of growth when they needed it the most, really. And then fun fact is Michael Scott actually banned all typewriters in the company in 1979. And it was believed that Jobs and Wozniak were too young / inexperienced, so that is why they hired Scott. It wasn't just because they were looking for someone just for fun. Rod Holt was hired as the first chief of engineering. Elmer Baum loaned Jobs and Wozniak $5,000 when the company first started to create the Apple I. So I guess technically he could have been the first investor too. But later on, he ended up joining the team in 1978. And then Jobs left the company in 1985 because he wanted to focus on his own computer. And that's when he created the next computer. It didn't really have a warm reception. It just didn't really hit home with the consumers. So it kind of flopped in a way. And then Wozniak actually stepped down from his role in 1987 as well. And when he did that, he created the first universal remote. And then Gil Amelio became the fifth CEO in 1993. And that's when he purchased Jobs' Next software from his computer. And this kind of opened the door for Jobs to join as an advisor in 1997. And the board of directors had some mixed feelings about it. Mark Markula was still on the board at this time, and that's actually when he ended up stepping down as well. And then at that time, Amelio resigned because many board members were doing it, and they just weren't happy with him. And that opened the door for Jobs to become the interim CEO. And then later on, it led him to be the CEO in 2000. And then Jobs stayed as the CEO until 2011 before he needed to step down for an illness, which was pancreatic cancer. And then Tim Cook took over after that, and he's still in charge today. Now, resistance to change. Apple's always seemed to press the right buttons at the right time when it comes to, at least technology-wise. They're always kind of innovating and managing when the right time is to do that. When I found is that Apple kind of has never really had a mistake when it comes to not introducing technology at the right time. Because a lot of its problems are really just internally with management and workers. I guess you could say one technology mistake they made was in 1990. Their stock dropped 20% because there were other computers hitting the market. They were no longer a monopoly for the computer, so their computer was just more expensive and it had less features as the other computers that were hitting the market. However, in the same year, just later on, it fixed its problem by creating 3 cheaper computers, which had more features. And then another problem was the board resisted Jobs coming back, so many resigned instead of just giving him a chance to, redeem himself. And then Apple has even bigger problems with its employees. Apple wanted its employees to start coming back during COVID in September of 2021, but many of its employees did not want to do that. Apple wanted them to be on a hybrid schedule, so they wanted them to be at work 3 days a week and then working from home every other day. But Apple thought that they could provide a better work-life balance, but the problem is many of the employees didn't agree. That's been a problem there since I found a review since 2016. One of the guys said it, but I imagine it extended further back than just then. And employees actually thought that they were more connected than ever before, which is another reason why they didn't want to come back. They felt more, at home, and they felt like they knew more people working at home than in the office because everyone's kind of on Zoom. You kind of meet people at the office. It's so big, you don't really get to meet that group of people that you would have met online. And then one employee, like I said, stated that it was bad, but it actually had gotten worse over the time. And then that is it. Hope you guys are having a good semester. Good luck with your finals, and yeah.